Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello, welcome to Keto Life Support. This is Kim Howerton, and this is episode 96. We are going to discuss keeping your promises. So, I have a history. Yes, I'm going to talk about myself again on this podcast because it's my podcast. Anyway. I'm a little self-conscious about how much I talk about myself, but I think it's one of the best ways I can illuminate things and maybe we can connect about things. So that's what I do. So in my history, I spent a lot of years making promises that I didn't keep. I'd make promises to myself. I'd make promises to other people. I'd make agreements. I'd make deals. I would never keep them. No, I wasn't just generally shifty. What I'm specifically talking about is my weight loss promises. And more than anything, the promises that mattered were the ones I made to myself. But I made them to other people. I promised boyfriends. I promised friends. I promised family members. And for the most part, it's not like these people required me to do these things, but I told them what I was going to do, and then they watched me not do them. And that has an effect. Absolutely. In certain relationships, it can cause a lot of damage. But ultimately, what I really want to focus on today are the promises we make to ourselves that we don't keep. And more than any other type of promise we make, those end up mattering the most, even though we ultimately seem to think they matter the least, right? Because how many times do you make a promise to a friend or a loved one, and you put a lot of effort into fulfilling that, into meeting that promise? A lot more than the promises a lot of us make to ourselves. But at the end of the day, to use an overused phrase, when we make ourselves promises that we don't keep, we set up an incredibly self-destructive dynamic, perhaps ultimately more destructive long-term than breaking promises to other people. Why do I say that? Well, it's because you can't get away from yourself. You are your constant companion. Some relationships end, they change, you redefine roles and boundaries, but ultimately, you always have you. And if you've taught yourself to distrust your promises, it is very, very challenging to live a happy life. So what do I mean by that? I mean, I kind of think you know what I mean by that, but let's go into it. So in your history, in my history, I'll say for sure, every Sunday night, there was a promise of another fresh start on Monday. And that fresh start, there was a lot of hope attached to it at first. And there were a lot of good feelings and a lot of relief and a lot of, oh, this time it's going to work. And then by Monday afternoon, that promise had borne out to be false. And over and over and over and over, I broke promises to myself to the point where I stopped believing myself, which led to me to stop believing in myself. And ultimately, that led to a decline in my feeling of efficacy, my abilities, my trust, and my feeling of integrity. And it broke me. In a way, it made me stop trying because I mean, think about a relationship you've had where somebody just constantly made you false promises. You stop believing in them and you kind of want to stop associating with them if you can, because it doesn't feel good to get lied to. And what does that do to your relationship with yourself? You start to feel like garbage because all you're doing week after week, promise after promise, is showing yourself that you are not to be trusted. Now, it can feel really bleak once you get into that place, but it can be turned around. And the solution is kind of simple. It's to start making promises you can keep and then keeping them. So, this is a cautionary tale around making promises without a plan. Because if we're trying to do something challenging, but we make no plan to make it work, we will fail and we will have proven ourselves to be a piece of garbage, or, fill in the blank about whatever negative story you tell yourself. But you just set it up to cycle that way. So it's like if I promise somebody that I'm going to build a bridge, I'm going to build a bridge from here to over there. I promise you that it's going to happen, but I don't buy bridge materials. I don't get an architectural plan. I don't rent a boat and workers. I don't do these things that are going to cause me to, at some point in time, have created the bridge that I said I was going to build. I mean, nobody's going to believe in me. Nobody's going to believe me. And rightfully so. So exactly the same way, if you don't make a plan, figure out the steps, know the problem solving around what may or may not happen along the way, you are in no condition to make a promise that something's going to happen. We don't will things into existence without a plan. I'm not saying you can't have faith, but your faith has to be based in making sure that it works. And so ultimately, so many of us go into a new diet or a new approach thinking that we'll figure it out. We'll make it work. I want it so much that it's going to happen. And over, I see that not happen. And over, I did that to myself. And so, one of those things that's really important, it kind of goes in two directions, right? The first one is you have to make a plan that you have a reasonable chance of making happen. So it has to be realistic. And then the second part is in a weaker moment. So you started keto and you're eating in a way that you want to be eating to get the results that you want to be getting. And something tempts you to veer off course. And you think, well, it's just an XYZ. It's just a little thing. But you don't stop and ask yourself, will that make me trust me less tomorrow? If I'm already a person who is flexible with their boundaries, and now I've proven that I will violate my rules, how much easier is it to violate your rules tomorrow? It's a lot easier. So when I first started keto and I made rules about how I would eat, I didn't violate those rules. I did not step off of the path of those rules. I was with those rules for 2 years before I said, okay, I think I can make some adjustments. I can add in some flexibility. I can start to make some adjustments. Not because the things that I decided to start to incorporate or change would have doomed my approach, but because they weren't how I defined my approach, they weren't within my boundaries and rules. At that time, they would have been a violation of my self-promise. They would have been evidence to me that it is okay to stray. Now, could I have done that differently, defined that differently? Absolutely. There's so many different ways to set this up. But what I think is crucial is, I'm not saying have a lack of flexibility, but I am saying don't make yourself promises you don't plan to keep. So if you've truly made a promise, and what is a promise? It's an honor-bound agreement that you're going to do something in a certain way, then you have to follow through to start to trust yourself. Now, if you have a history like mine, a history of violating your own promises, then maybe start with some small wins. Today, I'm not going to ... At lunch, I'm going to ... I'm going to pack my lunch today, and I'm not going to go out to lunch today, right? So little wins where you make yourself a promise and you follow through on that promise. You will start to see yourself as trustworthy. You will start to believe your own abilities. You will start to earn the right to hope because you've shown yourself that you can be trusted. Because that self-trust is so important. And so many of us really have blown it over the years and have lost faith in ourselves. So, to those of you that make yourself big promises that have no history behind them, like, on the one hand, I salute you, because all of us who've changed our lives at some point have made a sharp left turn and said, no more, it's going to be different now. However, when that left turn was very sharp, you have to be very diligent in protecting the path, because you will want to stray back to your business as usual. And to really go far enough down the road of the new path before you let any of your attention and diligence relax a little bit. Because a hard turn is hard, right? And you're gonna need to back it up with constant, in integrity actions that show that you are now doing things differently. Again, I'll draw to like any of us that have had a time in a relationship where maybe we violated some agreements or we hurt someone's feelings or we did something maybe not even intentionally, but we had to fix it. And in that time, we knew kind of we might be on some thin ice for a bit. We did not have a lot of leeway for that's not what I meant, or oh no, I meant it differently, or oh yeah, right. Thin ice. So when you're making a change that is contrary to how you tend to live, and you don't want to fall back in old ruts, you have to know you're kind of on thin ice and that every step matters. And if you want to, maybe set up just a successful first few steps, maybe those steps should be small. Maybe those promises shouldn't be the whole world. Maybe it's not, I'm losing 100 pounds this year. Maybe it's, I'm going to stop going out for every single meal. Right? I'm going to start packing my lunch. A week of packing your lunches. Hey, look what I did. I made a promise and I fulfilled it. Right? Small wins on your way to your big win. Ultimately, though, more than anything else, what matters is your relationship with yourself, with your trust in yourself, with your belief in yourself. As you strengthen those muscles, you will find yourself amazed with what you can accomplish, because who you are is now a person that accomplishes things. That is your new identity. And it is so different from where you came from, where you, and by you, I mean me, felt like such a failure at everything that they thought mattered about their health. And then one day, little change by little change, promise by promise, you can get to the other side of that where you actually finally trust and believe in yourself because you have shown yourself evidence that that is true. Okay, guys, hope this was helpful because I see so often with my clients that the first thing we need to fix is maybe not their food, is maybe not their exercise, is maybe not their calorie count, but is figuring out how to get into a better relationship with themselves about their choices, to get out of hopelessness and into self-belief, and to find a path forward that makes them the master of their journey instead of the victim. So I believe in you. It's time to start believing in yourself. So get those little wins under your belt, and I'll see you very soon.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.